The deep sea. This is the realm of the world's most powerful military machine. They can stay submerged for months at a time, ready to fire, totally undetected. Over 500 submarines patrol the world's oceans. Missile subs carry half the world's nuclear arsenal. Attack subs have replaced the battleship. They hunt and kill both enemy ships and submarines. They launch missiles and teams of commandos. Nuclear submarines can go anywhere, even under the Arctic ice. No one knows where they are, and no one can see them coming. This is Kings Bay Submarine Base in Georgia, home for over half the United States Navy's 18 Trident missile submarines. The USS Nebraska is about to embark on a 3-month patrol. Over 80% of this huge submarine is below the waterline. She carries a crew of 172 men and 24 nuclear missiles. A small team stays on deck. They secure every hatch and opening to make sure the submarine runs silently at sea. From here, it will be several hours before the Nebraska reaches deep water.
The mission of America's ballistic missile submarine force has always been deterrence of war. It is a very necessary thing for us to maintain a strong nuclear deterrent force so that any country that possesses nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction will never consider using them against America or her allies.
Just full, Bridgemont. That's the head full.
You'll be able to see the power of the ship when we come to the full bell. It makes quite a wake from the propeller there.
The Nebraska is as fast as any ship in the US Navy. It's nuclear powered. It only has to be refueled once every 20 years, and it can stay submerged for its entire 3-month patrol.
The ship is literally independent of the surface, limited only by the amount of food that we can carry. The ability to operate for 3 months without coming to periscope depth makes us truly the stealthiest platform in the world. In the unlikely event of an enemy first strike, the Trident submarine force would survive.
90 kilometers from shore, the Nebraska reaches the edge of the continental shelf. Deep water, and she prepares to dive.
Officer deck, sir. The number 1 scope is fully raised.
Very well, Chief of the Watch.
Submerge the ship, proceed to 180 feet.
Submerge the ship. Proceed to 180 feet, aye, sir.
Dive. Dive.
A double-skinned hull houses enormous ballast tanks.
Dive. Dive. All vents open.
When 9,000 liters of seawater flood into the tanks, the air is forced out of small vents at high pressure.
40, 41, 42, 43. 60 feet, sir. 61, 62, 63. 69. 70 feet, sir. 72, 74, 76, 78, 80, 82, 84.
Number 2 scope coming down,
88, 90 feet, sir.
The Nebraska slides down into this harsh, cold world. For every 30 meters she descends, the pressure outside increases by 3 times atmospheric pressure. The force is so immense that the hull shrinks. Across the missile compartment, a washing line that was taut at the surface hangs slack at 260 meters. The submarine is now several centimeters thinner. This is a world of sound, not vision. Submarines have rows of underwater microphones built into their hulls. The Nebraska's sonar operators can isolate the sound of a ship's propeller as far as 5,000 kilometers away, the width of the Atlantic.
353, designate Cirrus 5. Initial classification, submerged contact.
Alright. Con sonar. Can't do circulatory identity detect bearing 354.
This is a waterfalling 360-degree display. Any dot you see there is a noise in the ocean, and any line that is getting lighter is a trace or a contact out there. What we can calculate after tracking one of these contacts is their course, their speed, their range, anything that we might need to shoot a weapon or to track them accurately.
They can identify the exact class of any surface ship or submarine by the sound from its propellers. If another ship or submarine comes too close, the Nebraska goes on immediate alert.
Initial classified submerged contact. Recommend opening datum.
In the torpedo room, a firing team stands by. These submarines can carry 16 torpedoes.
TTCP. Make 2-1 ready in all respects.
Make 2-1 ready in all respects, huh?
But the Nebraska prefers to hide by going ultra quiet.
Quick quiet, quick quiet.
In seconds, the submarine is transformed from quiet to silent. Anything not vital to basic operations is powered down. The slightest human noise could be detected by an enemy sub. The crew settles in for what could be a long wait. Millions of dollars of top-secret silencing technology has been built into these submarines. Trident submarines are so quiet that the US Navy claims that not one has ever been successfully tracked by an enemy.
Some folks have made the remark that when trying to track Trident submarines, what one really needs to do is to follow the quiet hole in the ocean as it moves around. Finding Nebraska in the Atlantic Ocean is to propose a preposterous engineering challenge.
The machine comes first. The men eat, rest and sleep in any space they can find.
First patrol was, I wouldn't say really scary, just couldn't adapt. You have no clue what's going on around you. There's things coming over the 1MC all the time. You have no clue what they're talking about. Fans come off and on, machines go off and on, and you're there, kind of waiting for someone to tell you what to do.
Like a spacecraft, a submarine needs a complete life support system for its crew. The nuclear reactor provides the power to extract oxygen and drinking water from seawater. Only a nuclear submarine can support so many men underwater for so long. From a small galley, the cooks serve 50,000 meals on each patrol.
Food is the only thing that limits us to the amount of time we can stay at sea. As you can see, we utilize every nook and cranny, and we pack all the food into this one storeroom for our 90-day patrols.
Here, there's no night and day. The 24-hour day is changed to an intensive 18-hour schedule.
You got 6 hours of watch, you got 6 hours off-time work, and then 6 hours of sleep. If you don't keep busy, having something to do, you'll just drive yourself up a wall. There's really nothing to do other than work down here.
During the patrol, most of the crew, even the helmsman, don't know where they are.
When USS Nebraska is on patrol, really there are only a very few people that know of her exact whereabouts, and they're all on board the submarine. Shoreside, my operational commander, who has assigned me a certain number of hundreds of square miles of ocean to operate in, knows generally what part of the world I'm in, but even he does not know my exact location.
If the only people who know of her location are on board, it's impossible for an enemy to find her.
Tonight at 11, there's another pressing case in store for the prosecutors. Concluding Crime Night on Discovery.
"200 kilos of pure muscle, razor-sharp teeth, deadly claws. Yet they're the ones in danger. Witness an extraordinary experiment to save a species. The first ever effort to return captive tigers to the wild. Living with Tigers, Sunday on Discovery Channel."
A multitude of identities, a multitude of thoughts, a multitude of actions. Growth and prosperity for mankind. Human rights and social justice. Unity will give us strength to prosper. Forum Barcelona 2004, an event that will move the world.
Beneath this protective cover is a 15-meter-long Trident D5 missile.
Launch your topside high. Stoll, outside section 213.
It's a weapon of unimaginable destructive power. It weighs over 65 tons, and it has a range of 10,000 kilometers. Each missile carries up to 10 independently targeted nuclear warheads. The Nebraska is always ready to fire. In the missile room, the 24 giant tubes are continuously monitored. A missile technician patrols the decks around the tubes, checking for any possible fault or hazard every 30 minutes. Constant readiness is a vital part of the mission.
For a true deterrence to be effective, the adversary has to believe that you're willing to carry out your mission. And in that respect, we are certainly willing to carry out the mission when directed to launch our missiles at the intended targets.
The Nebraska can receive orders at great depth at any time. A trailing wire antenna receives coded radio messages on extreme low frequency.
The process of a nuclear weapons release would begin when the ship received an EAM, an emergency action message.
The secret launch codes can be transmitted directly to the submarine.
Engineer, what's the alert one?
Missile execution message.
Very well, engineer. XO, break out our code book. Within the EAM are certain codes which are used by me to verify the validity of the launch order, to ensure that the message is from the President and that the launch order is proper.
Message 10 on the console. Report message 10. Report message 10, aye, sir. Captain, message 10 is valid and requires authentication using code ID Delta, Oscar, Golf.
A two-officer team, plus the executive officer and myself, must jointly concur that the message is valid, it's authentic, and that the proper codes are contained within the message.
Sierra, Alpha, Lima.
The codes in that message are unique to each Trident. The codes themselves are among America's most closely guarded secrets.
Captain, message authenticates.
I concur, message authenticates.
Captain, I concur, the message authenticates.
The message is authentic. Action directed.
Captain, message 10 directs Nebraska to launch 4 of our missiles aimed at the site specified in the message. The launch window...
The 4-person team would jointly concur in the need to obtain the captain's key. The captain's key is the final key that is necessary to activate the D5 weapon system and actually launch a D5 missile.
Very well. Obtain the captain's key from the MCC safe.
Obtain the captain's key from the MCC safe. Aye, sir.
Authorized entry into the captain's key safe has been granted. Disregard all captain's key safe alarms.
Currently we are aiming the missiles themselves to targets out into the water. If directed to, we can very quickly shift over to the actual targets.
Captain, sir, entry into the captain's key safe is complete. We have obtained the captain's key, sir.
I concur. Very well. I accept custody of the captain's key.
Yes, sir.
Captain, sir, I recommend battle stations missile.
Very well. Officer of the deck, man battle stations missile.
Man battle stations missile for training without guidance with launcher. Simulate spinning up all missiles.
Timing plan will be the current timing plan. Con weapon side.
In the missile compartments, technicians check and activate the tubes to be fired.
Detonator power supplies 1, 2, and 3 are on. Detonator power supplies 1, 2, and 3 are on, aye.
Launch the cam, missile compartment ready.
The fire order will be 1-13-2-14.
Com, Chief of the Watch, prepare to hover at normal launch depth.
Yes, Sir Martin, all of the targets are verified correct.
This target's verified correct, aye, sir.
Within 15 minutes of receiving the launch codes, missile control is ready to fire.
Weapons launcher aye.
Set condition 1SQ for training without guidance with launcher.
This is the captain. This is an exercise.
Camp launcher. Hold forward and aft system 1SQ.
Weapons con, the firing window is open. You have permission to fire.
Firing window is open. You have permission to fire, sir. Weapons con. The firing window is open. You have permission to fire.
And once the coordinates are entered into the missile, we put them through sequence, which means they pressurize the tubes to sea pressure. I pull the trigger, which actually sends a signal down to the gas generators in the missile compartment lower level, which shoot the missile out on a big ball of steam, rises up to the surface. Theoretically, it prevents the missile from ever touching the water. Reaches the surface, broaches, detects a signal within the missile, starts to fall back down, and actually ignites at that point. rocket propels itself up into space, and each individual warhead is then released towards its intended target.
13 away.
Fourteen away. Weapons con.
Weapons con, permission to fire is removed.
Permission to fire removed, aye, sir. Weapons con, permission to fire removed.
Permission to fire removed. Set condition 4SQ.
Set condition 4SQ.
Set condition 4SQ, weapons launcher aye.
I don't look forward to carrying out the mission, but when directed to, I think it's important. I've personally thought about it myself in great detail, and I feel that what I'm doing here is important and necessary to the country.
All of the individuals in this program have sworn to obey the orders of the President of the United States. All of them understand the weight of their responsibilities as members of this crew, and I believe that all of them, if called upon to execute a launch, would do so. It's a weighty responsibility. It is not one that I take lightly.
The world's first nuclear-powered submarine, the Nautilus, was launched in 1954. This was a major escalation in the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Submarines that could stay submerged indefinitely would bring a major strategic advantage. The ideal patrol area for these submarines was under the Arctic ice, directly between the two superpowers. In October 1958, the Nautilus became the first submarine to reach the North Pole, passing directly under it. But the Soviet Union was not far behind. 2 years later, the first Soviet nuclear submarine, the K-3, surfaced at the North Pole. For the next 30 years, the Arctic became the battleground for the superpowers. This is the world's largest submarine, known in the West as Typhoon. The pride of the Russian Navy, the Typhoon is like two submarines joined together under a huge outer hull. It's nearly twice the size of the American Trident submarines. It has a crew of 150 and carries 20 nuclear missiles. It's so large, the spacious crew quarters even include a swimming pool and a sauna. The Typhoons were seen as such a threat to the West that they all had to be tracked at any cost. This was the job of the West's attack submarines, the hunter-killers. Groton, Connecticut. This is the main base for the attack submarines of the United States Atlantic Fleet. They are maintained in floating dry docks, which can be moved anywhere in the world. The USS Miami is a Los Angeles-class hunter-killer. It was designed to track enemy submarines and protect aircraft carriers. Less than half the size of a Trident missile sub, it is streamlined, fast, and stealthy. But inside, it's extremely claustrophobic.
When they designed the submarine, human comfort wasn't the top priority. There's just abundant amounts of gear shoved in every possible location. We have electrical gear shoved anywhere possible. And then as we move on down the passageway, you can see everything from electronic to we got medical gear that has to be moved constantly. chart lockers that stick out the side of the passageway, electrical panels in the outboards. It's just like living on a sardine can. With a crew of 130 men, the submarine's not big enough to accommodate everyone. One of the things we do is we even put racks down in the torpedo room to accommodate 12 personnel. Some people have to do what they call hot racking. It's when we have 2 racks for 3 personnel. The reason it's called hot racking is because you may get to your rack and it'll still be warm from the guy who just got out of it.
6-6. Our 2 scopes under.
The Miami is armed with one of the world's most advanced weapons. The ADCAP torpedo. It is 7 meters long, weighs 1.5 tons, and carries an explosive charge capable of sinking any ship.
I'm looking.
It's designed like a mini submarine. It has its own engine, fuel supply, and a sonar homing system.
Ramming.
A thin control wire, an incredible 30 kilometers long, keeps it connected to the submarine.
Current bearing is 249. Insert a 20-degree steer to the right.
A weapons officer can adjust the torpedo's course as it speeds through the water at up to 60 knots. But when it attacks a surface ship, the ADCAP is actually designed to miss the hull.
Rather than hitting the side of the surface ship, it will run underneath the ship and explode, creating a large void or vacuum, and that force and void is so great that the keel of the ship will just split in half.
But the greatest challenge for the Miami is to hunt down other submarines. For 30 years, a deadly game of cat and mouse was fought out under the Arctic ice. The noise of the constantly shifting ice pack made it the ideal hiding place for Soviet Typhoons and their escort attack submarines. The most powerful and dangerous of these hunter-killers was the Akula. Attack submarines like the Miami tracked the giant Soviet submarines. In the event of nuclear war, they would have been ordered to attack, to prevent the Typhoon from launching its missiles. The US submarines had an important technical advantage. A sonar array inside a cable towed up to half a mile behind the hull. Isolated from the noise of its own ship, it's a powerful tool for detecting other submarines.
Laminar distance, 400 yards.
Using this data, the Miami is able to keep a fix on the Typhoon's position.
It's 249. Current bearing is 249.
The Akula and Typhoon stay close, aware that an American attack sub might be in the vicinity. The Miami must stay within torpedo range without being detected. In the worst-case scenario, she could have just minutes to attack.
Officer deck, man battle stations.
Man battle stations, aye, sir. Chief of the watch, man battle stations.
Man battle stations.
Miami moves in for the kill. The torpedo tubes are flooded.
Propulse tank is vented, aye. Stand by, shooter tube.
Solution ready.
Solution ready, aye.
Ship ready, aye.
Solution ready.
Solution ready, aye. Match sonar bearings and shoot.
Shoot 2-1.
2-1, aye. 2-1.
2-1 is away.
Shoot!
course, 229. Laminar distance, 2400 yards. Run to enable, 3600 yards.
As the torpedo approaches the Typhoon, its course can be adjusted by the control wire. The Typhoon can't detect the torpedo until it's too late. But the Miami has blown her cover and is under threat from the Soviet escort sub, the Akula.
Submarine on wire, bearing 337.
Watch primary countermeasure. Watch primary countermeasure, right?
The Miami launches decoys, sound emitters, which try to trick the Akula's torpedoes. In reality, the United States and the Soviet Union have never fired a torpedo at each other. But every day, thousands of submariners risk their lives to protect the peace. In 1963, the US Navy lost one of its nuclear submarines. The USS Thresher was conducting its first deep-sea trials in the North Atlantic. It suddenly lost power and began sinking uncontrollably. At 650 meters, the hull imploded from the immense pressure. None of the 129 crew survived. Only scraps of wreckage were ever found. No one knows for sure what happened, but lessons were learned. Every submariner is now trained in special emergency procedures. Flooding is their worst nightmare. This flood simulator trains them to handle anything from a burst pipe to a cracked hull.
In a submarine, every minute counts, every second. For every second that flooding is entering that submarine, you're adding weight to the submarine. They have to be able to use the tools. It has to be an instinct. If they have to think how to use the tools in a real casualty, then it will not succeed.
Flying from port ASW suction, starboard ASW suction are now a controlled leak.
The submariner's next worst nightmare is fire. Oxygen can run out in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Emergency air is piped all over the submarine.
Fire is more dangerous on a submarine than on any other ship, simply because you have 100-some people contained inside of a steel cylinder. They don't have anywhere for the smoke to go, for the gases, the heat. They don't have any place for all of that to go. We try to create the most realistic environment that we can. It's all computer controlled, but if they don't keep putting extinguishing agent on it, then it will actually reflash on them, just like a real fire would. On submarines, we can't have a specified firefighting party because you only have a limited number of people. We all have to count on each other.
This is a job that involves the whole crew on a submarine. Unless a crew learns how to control a fire in this classroom, they know that in the event of a real fire at sea, they may not be able to save their ship from going down.
Killers who subdue their victims with drugs cause problems of identification for the forensic detectives at 9. More from Crime Night at 10 as the FBI files investigate the disappearance of a 14-year-old girl. And at 11, a robbery and double murder, but there's little evidence for the prosecutors. Join the hunt for justice. Crime Night, Thursday, on Discovery.
What is it that makes a city? A sense of history, architectural vision, economic need, or the people who choose to live there? Why do our cities have to change in order to survive? Follow the evolution of 3 of the world's most iconic cities, from rural settlement to mega metropolis. We built this city, Sunday 22nd of February on Discovery.
Now you can discover the world at your fingertips with full Discovery TV listings, highlights and exclusive extras on your favorite programs, all in your language. Discover your world. Log on to www.discoveryromane.com.
The 1991 Gulf War heralded a new age for submarine warfare. There were no naval engagements, but Los Angeles-class submarines launched cruise missile attacks against land targets.
The newest 688 class submarines have 12 of these vertical launch tubes in the ballast tank forward of the pressure hull. From these we can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles. It's a great advantage for a submarine to fire Tomahawk cruise missiles like this because we can launch them at periscope depth, and by the time the missile's flying in enemy territory, the submarine is long gone.
The latest Tomahawks are accurate to within 5 meters. Some submarines can launch a very different weapon to the front lines. US Navy SEAL commandos. The USS James K. Polk was originally a nuclear missile platform, converted for the SEALs in 1993. This missile compartment has been rebuilt to accommodate 50 SEALs and their equipment. Some of the empty missile tubes are now used for storing equipment. Two of the tubes are connected to the dry dock shelters on deck.
This huge space that I'm in used to house a 32-ton Poseidon missile. It's been adapted for our use as an access way to the dry deck shelter directly above my head through that hatch.
Even the spaces between the tubes are used. Every SEAL works out here for at least 6 hours a day.
Dive! 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 Dive!
It's up to the crew of the USS Polk to get the SEALs as close as possible to shore without being detected.
We are specialists in operating in shallow water, and we have to be able to operate precisely at slow speeds to safely put the SEALs out on their mission.
Officer of the deck, shoal water, 3 pump 100 yards off the port beam, recommend slope.
Very well, navigation supervisor.
If you stood Polk on its tail, it would frequently be sticking well above the water, and that's how shallow water we operate in.
The SEALs are trained to carry out over 200 different types of missions. Communication Center keeps the commanders in radio and sonar phone contact with the SEALs outside the submarine. The USS Polk hovers at periscope depth. Before the mission begins, a final check is made for any surface ships. Finally, the captain gives the all clear.
Very well, that's the deck. Pressurize the port hangar, open the port hangar outer door, check deck conditions.
Pressurize port hangar, open the port hangar outer door, check deck conditions. Aye, sir.
The SEALs can carry out missions completely submerged, using mini-subs launched from the dry dock shelters. First, the mini-sub is winched out onto the deck. It has 2 pilots and can carry a small team of SEALs to beaches or harbours without ever surfacing. It's the ultimate sneak attack.
Sonar count, are we still there in the forward group? Sonar count, aye. Dive no more air from the forward group.
Secure trim pump or drain pump, Chief of Watch.
Secure drain pump, aye.
They can even launch rubber boats underwater. Specialist divers escort the commandos through the dry dock shelters up to the boats. In minutes, a large team assembles on the surface. The Polk can even tow the SEALs' boats by rope.
Officer deck and everything inside, 1/3, sir.
Eventually, all US attack submarines will be equipped to deliver SEALs and operate as frontline units. Only one nuclear submarine has ever carried out a real torpedo attack. A single attack that changed the way the world looked at modern warfare. In April 1982, the Royal Navy's HMS Conqueror was heading to the South Atlantic at full speed. It was part of a British task force on its way to the Falkland Islands in response to the Argentine invasion.
3 nuclear submarines were sent down ahead of the surface ships. My mission was to take up a patrol round the island to stop the Argentinians reinforcing it.
One of the main Argentine naval threats was the cruiser, the General Belgrano.
My initial contact was probably in excess of 100 miles, and having closed the bearing all night and most of that morning, I classified the 3 ships as the Belgrano, the cruiser, being escorted by her 2 destroyers. And I let them go past me, watching them as they went by, and took up a trailing position so that I was outside the visual detection range.
Captain Chris Reeford Brown sent his first report back to Northwood Naval Command in England. But his initial orders were not to attack unless the Belgrano came within 300 kilometers of the islands.
By early afternoon on the 2nd of May, I'd been trailing them for some 40 hours, and I was at periscope depth receiving my signals from northward when it became apparent to me that there was a rule of engagement change coming in, which allowed all the nuclear submarines down there to attack any Argentinian ship that was in the South Atlantic outside the Argentinian territorial waters. I was then about 14,000 yards away from the warships. I could just see the tops of their masts over the horizon. So I went deep to close them at speed, because I could only do about 7 knots or so at periscope depth.
Diving guard, diving guard.
So I'd actually been working out in my own mind exactly what I'd do if the rules of engagement changed and I was allowed to attack them. And I decided to use the Mark 8 straight-running diesel torpedoes because I knew they were reliable, and if I got a hit they would cause some damage to the cruiser. One would only have one chance to carry out a successful attack, and it was absolutely vital that we got that right.
The Conqueror had to get within 2 kilometers of the Belgrano to attack.
She was doing about 13 knots throughout the attack and zigzagging slowly, so every time she altered course we would do another setup to correct the fire control position. At the point of firing, I'd come up for a final bearing of the target through the periscope, and once the periscope was on it and I was happy, I'd then give the order to fire.
This sound is the actual recording from the Conqueror's sonar room when the torpedoes were fired. To increase the chances of a hit, 3 torpedoes were fired in a spread, 30 meters apart.
We'd calculated the time from firing to a hit would be around 47 to 50 seconds. Just before the 45 seconds was up, I raised the periscope to have a look at the target.
Explosion.
As we heard the hits on the sonar, I distinctly saw a plume of orange smoke from the Belgrano.
To avoid counterattack, HMS Conqueror immediately went deep and cruised away at top speed. Belgrano's escort ships were already pounding the sea with anti-submarine depth charges.
The attack had really, to me, been a culmination of all my submarine training, well over 10 years. I think there was a feeling of success and jubilation throughout the whole of my team. We were the first nuclear submarine to have ever carried out such an attack. We'd achieved our mission. And that, I think, later on was tempered by the fact that we'd actually killed people.
With nothing to challenge Britain's nuclear attack submarines, the Argentine Navy returned to port for the remainder of the war, and the islands were successfully recaptured. Conqueror returned home to its base in Scotland to a hero's welcome.
We were almost overawed by the reception. As we came up the Clyde, there were lots of people waving with banners, hundreds of small ships out to welcome us in. And it was actually probably the most emotional time of the whole patrol.
They flew the skull and crossbones, a World War II tradition for a successful kill. The stealth and independence of nuclear submarines makes them a powerful force. As long as the deep sea remains invisible to light and radar, these submarines will remain the most deadly machines on the planet.